For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
October 2021 will go down in the history of India's defense production as a seminal month. In this month, the corporatization of the Ordnance Factory Board was completed and notified. That's the topic of this week's Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So what are Ordnance Factory Board or Ordnance factories that were corporatized or turned into wholly owned government defense public sector undertakings from what they were earlier? Well, the Ordnance Factory Board or the Ordnance factories have been one of the oldest defense manufacturing units in the world. They were established as way back as 1801, when the gun and shell factory at Kosipur near Kolkata was established. Since then, before independence, under the British, there were 18 ordnance factories which catered to the British Army and later the British Air Force or the Royal Air Force in terms of ammunition, clothing, guns, revolvers, you name it. They used to manufacture these under the ordnance factories. Post 1947 and till 1979, these ordnance factories grew into a number of 41 ordnance factories spread across the country. And they were all run from 1979 under an arrangement called the Ordnance Factory Board. They were wholly owned by the Department of Defense Production. Their budgets were given by the Department of Defense Production. And irrespective of whether they made profits, whether they made losses, these factories continued to get the budgetary support from the government. So the model that they adopted that time to sell their ammunition, their guns and other peripheral products to the Indian military in a model called cost plus. So if the cost was say 10 rupees, they would add a 15% profit and then sell it to the Indian military. So on the one hand, the government was giving them the budget, and on the other, government was paying them through the Indian military. This was an unsustainable model. And no wonder that the Ordnance Factory Board or the ordnance factories did not make much profit. They were inefficient, they were lethargic, their quality was always questionable, and the Indian military started complaining against the Ordnance Factory Board and its products vociferously in the past 20 years or so. But it took a majority government, a bold government, to bite the bullet despite 3 or 4 previous reports about turning them into defense public sector units which will be responsible for their own profits and losses, for their own R&D or what is called research and development, and competing with the best of the companies in the private sector. It was only the Modi government in 2019 which decided to take the bull by the horns and convert the Ordnance Factory Boards into corporate entities. They will, of course, be fully owned by the government. They will, the 70 to 80,000 odd employees who are currently employed by the OFB will retain their employment at least for the next 3 years. And they will get converted, or they have got converted into 7 different entities. They are these 7 different defense PSUs are now called Munition India Limited, Armored Vehicles Nigam Limited, Advanced Weapons and Equipment Limited, Troops Comfort Limited, Yantra Limited, India Optel Limited, and Gliders India Limited, which means the different segments of military manufacturing or defense manufacturing will be outsourced by the old Ordnance Factory Board to these 7 different entities. They all will be responsible for their own profit and losses, running their own affairs, and there will be no assured defense budget or assured budget from the Department of Defense Production. This is a major defense reforms after the appointment of the Chief of Defense Staff and the creation of the Department of Military Affairs that has been carried out by the Modi government in the past couple of years in their second term. This has been talked about, as I said, for 20 years, but it took a lot of political courage and overcoming opposition from the employees' union, from some of their own allies and their own party members. The BJP-led NDA government has finally taken the decision. On 1st of October, they all turned into 7 different defense PSUs. How they will survive, how they will compete is a moot question. In fact, a private consultancy firm had done a wargaming and had come up with a conclusion that in the next 3 or 4 years, only 3 of the 7 entities that have been created on 1st of October may just well survive. Others will just collapse because of lack of expertise, lack of the competitiveness, and lack of what is called the core values that defense manufacturing must have for good quality. What will happen to them, what will happen to the employees is a question for the future. But the fact is, India needed to come out of this because out of these 7 factories or 7 entities, some of the exports can also be carried out. Because remember, India has now given itself a target of $5 billion worth of defense exports from India by 2025. And if these companies were not turned into different entities, they would have still dragged down the budget, the defense budget. They would have not competed and they would not have been able to support the Indian military the way it needs to do. So it's a major reform, as I mentioned, and therefore it should be taken note of. That's why we are taking note of. This is not the core subject of StratNews Global or Simply Nitin, but I thought people should know about this reform because this is a long-term impact on India's defense budget as well as the efficiency of the public sector undertakings in defense. That's all I have this week. Do keep watching StratNews Global and of course Simply Nitin. We will bring to you, as we do every week, different subjects, different aspects, going behind the headlines and telling you what lies in the details. As they say, the devil is in the details. The fine print is important, and that's why we bring you this program every week on Saturdays. Do keep subscribing to our YouTube channel and of course, support us financially whenever you can if you feel we are doing some good work. Until the next time, it's goodbye.